Hello, everyone. This is Ricky Roberts from AMAS Division D. We'll be speaking today on swiftwater and flood rescue awareness. Our objectives are to identify and describe the different levels of water rescue personnel. We will talk about the awareness level, identifying hazards at an incident. We'll also talk about the incident has all the resources it needs and how to secure additional resources. We'll talk about the incident command system. We'll talk about incident action plan. We'll talk about scene security. We will talk about implementing an active and passive search at the incident. Talk about different levels of PPE. We'll talk about the support positions at a water rescue. And we'll talk about the safety officer's role at the incident. We'll talk about normalization of deviance, and we'll talk about terminating the water rescue incident. Water rescue differs from other rescue disciplines because it overlaps, fills in gaps between sub-disciplines. As many of you know, water rescue is greatly tied in with rope rescue. But you need a good understanding of all the different types of technical rescue to go with water. As the slide here shows, you've got the possibility for a rope rescue, you've got the possibility for extrication, water, ice, several different sub-disciplines working together. Now, how we get these disciplines is through NFPA, which the codes are updated every 3 to 5 years. The two big standards that we're concerned about in technical rescue are 1670, which govern our teams, and 1006, which cover the individual rescue. This is where, from these NFPA documents, is where we get our authority having jurisdiction and our knowledge and our training for our teams, which sets us up for our training. Our JPRs detail the jobs, the tasks, equipment, and evaluations. As you know, any fire college class that you take, you're required to do JPRs at the end of the class. Those are dictated by 1006 and 1670. Now, when you attend a technical rescue course like water rescue, there are different levels. You have your awareness level, which we're covering today. You have your operations level, and then you have your technician level. Your awareness level is basically just a general understanding of the discipline. Operations, think of it in water rescue as a shore-based personnel. Your technician is going to be your person that actually gets into the water. They will be the one that actually get in to perform the rescue if needed. Now, NFPA also breaks water rescue down into several sub-disciplines. Surface water is anything not frozen moving less than 1.15 miles per hour or 1 knot, no waves, and there's not any type of submerged victim. Now, ice, simply as it says, is a frozen surface. Swiftwater is anything above 1.15 miles per hour or 1 knot. Surf is a wave or wave action. And NFPA determines that wave from 1 to 6 foot. Dive, think of that in water rescue as anyone that is submerged. Your victims will be under the water. So a lot of people ask, what is the difference between surface, swift, and flood? The definition of flood water rescue per the NFPA standard is any area not commonly holding water runoff or flow. So that's going to be your cities and your urban areas for your flooding. And then finally, watercraft. That just involves any vessel, and it can be paddled, with by hand or motor or by motor, and it's used directly or indirectly for your rescue. Your size up, think on your instant size up. It's just like you would at a fire or EMS scene. You're going to arrive, you're going to observe, you're going to get the information you need and figure out what you need to do to mitigate this incident. Training and the experience level of your crews are going to dictate greatly what you do once you do that size up on the scene. When you're doing your size up, you must immediately recognize your hazards. So take a look there on the right of the screen at that low head down. Do we have a victim that's trapped in the boil line of that low head down or above it? That would be an immediate hazard to the victim and you as the rescuer. Any type of potential hazard would be, as the slide says, any type of electrical service, which, by the way, be very aware around lakes and rivers of residential docks. especially in flooding. A lot of people have lights on their piers. Be very careful of that. Natural or propane gas, any type of natural cliff or drop off, or slippery boat ramps. A lot of injuries occur in water rescue personnel for boat ramps. Part of your size up is you've got to recognize what type of specialized crews or equipment that you need when you're doing your size up. And it's an action plan, as you all are aware. It's just a blueprint. It's just an idea of how you're going to address this incident. Any incident action plan needs to incorporate safety, the methods that we're going to perform under, what personnel we're going to need, and what equipment, especially in water rescue. We're going to need special equipment, not normally what we would find on a fire truck or a rescue ambulance. Scene safety. Think of it as you would arrive on a structure fire or a vehicle accident. We need to secure that scene. We need to make sure that no one's on that scene that we don't want to be there. It needs to be all first responders. You need to take the steps to not only protect your crew, the victims, but also the bystanders. On your initial arrival, come up with a basic safety plan. What do I need to do when I first get here to set everything in play? And you need to also look around and think, what will be the different steps of things that could happen or possibly happen, and go ahead and address those beforehand. Now, you individually need to take a look at it and evaluate your personal skills. Look at that situation. No matter the level that you're trained in water rescue, are you personally able to address this issue? Do you possess the knowledge and the skill set to be part of this rescue? That is heavily involved with your individual safety in making that decision. Spatial awareness is basically looking at a scene holistically and looking at all the hazards and concerns. Take a look at the PowerPoint. On your left, you simply see a river or a stream that you could possibly do a rescue. If you look at the broad picture, you just see flowing water. But if you'll take a look in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a piece of rebar there. When you're doing your size up, you have to be very thorough in looking at that scene and making sure you eliminate or at least identify all the hazards to you or your crew. Rescue versus recovery. In water rescue, we use a survivability profile. We take a look at all things considered, how long the victim's been missing. The biggest thing is the time submerged. We use, just like in EMT Basic, we learn about the golden hour. We generally use a 60-minute rule for submersion. But as always, you follow your local EMS protocols. Even if that person has been submerged longer than that, that is something for the local medical control doctor to make that call. But you, as the size up personnel or officer on the scene, you need to determine whether it is a rescue versus recovery. Additional resources. When you get on the scene, you may be able to mitigate a simple rescue with what you have, just with you and your crew. But you very well may be in a large-scale flooding incident where you need to call in additional resources. Homeland Security, FEMA, NIMS have team typing. Now the teams are typed 1 through 4. 4 would be the base level, the lower level, all the way up to type 1. In the state of Alabama, we are attempting to make our Swiftwater teams in all divisions type 1. When addressing the different typing of the teams and the resources and their requests to different areas, they pair the problem presented with the resources. Basically, that means however big the problem is, or the flooding in our situation would dictate what level team that we're going to request. Additional resources also are in getting help or pre-planning. You should thoroughly pre-plan your area that you are subject to make calls to. Pre-planning in water rescue is a little bit different than pre-planning buildings. If you have an area that you're susceptible to having water rescues, you should go out and pre-plan that area twice a year at a minimum. You should do that in the fall, and you should do it in the spring. And you ask why. Simply being is the water level changes drastically in our local streams and rivers. So you need to be prepared of what the different levels are for your egress points. If you get in the water, You should be able to be prepared of where you're going to get to the water as far as launching boats or personnel. And also, along with your pre-planning, adopt standard operating procedures as far as how you would contact resources for help. We do use the instant command system in water rescue. It makes incident more manageable. It allows us to delegate different actions. And in water rescue, we'll often have our own operational branch. Incident action plans can be in 3 different levels. Think of a large-scale incident action plan as far as a hurricane response. A medium-scale incident action plan, which would be verbal or between incident commanders, might be a flooding incident in your jurisdiction, all the way down to a smaller scale incident action plan. It could be simply a watercraft incident where one unit in your jurisdiction responds and simply wades out and gets a victim out of the water. It could be just a spoken incident action plan between the company officer and his men. Scene security. We need to make sure that no more harm comes to our victims or our rescuers. And we need to make sure we consider personnel protection. We want to make sure that first of all, our people are safe. Now, one good way to allow people out to stay out of our rescue area is scene tape. Be good to keep a roll in your apparatuses. Vehicle blockades, just like you would block roads in motor vehicle accidents, you can use your vehicles to block roads. Law enforcement is always a wonderful asset to have to keep unwanted people from a rescue scene. And then a public address system or use. Think of bullhorns on your trailers to allow you to broadcast your voice or the PA systems in your command vehicles to ask people to step away from the scene. When you arrive on the scene, you're going to have to come up with some type of a search measure. Now, we have 2 different search measures, active and passive. An active search measure is going to be one of 2 things. The victim is clearly in our sight. Think of a victim, as the slide shows, you have a victim out in this water asking for help. Or you have a witness that gives a point last seen saying that the victim was recently, say, 40 yards out in that water. That's an active search measure. We basically have a very high probability that we do have a victim there and there is a rescue to be done. On the other end of the spectrum, we have passive search. That's where we have to investigate. And it can simply be you got a call from an overdue kayaker or fisherman and you respond to a scene and there's really no one there. That would not really justify us putting someone in the water and we have no reason to suspect that they're 100% there. Witnesses are a wonderful way for us to gain intel about our victims. When we get on the scene, we need to interview the witnesses to find out what has happened, how many victims we have. Let the witness tell the story. Too many times we try to put words into our victim's mouth. Let the victim tell you what they saw. If you have multiple victims, separate them. That way you can compare the stories. If you do have children, like we learn in our EMS training, you might want to kneel down to the child to get on their level. It's less intimidating to them. And you may simply have no witnesses. Any type of information that you have, you need to document. Write down any type of stories, any type of contact information. And it's always a great idea to do a simple scene sketch of what you had when you got there. Now, one thing that I do find personally very helpful on water rescue scenes is we have a form that we already have filled out that you can actually hand to someone and have them ask the interview questions. It's pre-printed, really helps because you don't have to think of the questions on the spot. It's very detailed down to description, clothes, can they swim, etc. So that may be one thing that you think about adding to your equipment cache. PPE, the biggest thing that I would like you to know from this awareness video is as firefighters, there's no situation that we should wear structural firefighting gear in flooded water. Our structural firefighting gear is not made for water rescue. As you see in the picture on the slide, the author here has his turnouts on, but in it, experiments that we've done, your PPE is going to fill up, it's going to wear out, and you're simply going to sink. You're better off not to wear any PPE than to wear your turnout gear. The best thing as far as water rescue, even if you're based on the shore, is going to be a PFD and a helmet and gloves. And we'll address that in just a second. Let's talk about dry suits, because that's what your operational, your technical rescuers are going to have on, and that's who we're going to be supporting at the awareness level. The dry suits give us thermal protection. They keep all the bad stuff from us. Think about them as almost like a hazmat suit, but they do present an issue with hydration and hypothermia. They're very hot. Even in the wintertime, working in cold water, it really, really builds up heat in these suits. There's nowhere for your body heat to go. So we really need to be mindful and have an EMS crew on scene for our water rescuers, especially if they're doing a lot of aggressive work in the water. And in the summertime, for sure, they get very hot. Now, these dry suits are encapsulated and they protect us from contaminated water. Early on in Swiftwater Rescue, when we first entered this discipline back 15, 20 years ago here in Alabama, we were wearing wetsuits. But wetsuits, yes, they keep us warm, but they allowed the contaminants to get next to our body. And so as the NFPA standards improved and we learned more and more here in the state of Alabama, we learned that it was going to be beneficial for us to wear our dry suits. And this is the things they protect us from: biological contaminants, sewage, parasites, chemical contaminants, gasoline, oil. Think about a flooding situation, you're downtown, your area, all the different things could come in contact with you in that water. And we've seen these in past deployments, hurricane deployments. Anything from overflowing sewage systems, septic tanks, dead animals, vehicles, all kinds of really bad stuff in the water. So we want to make sure we use our PPE. And on that note, also, we don't have a slide on it, but we need to make sure we set up a good, proper decon when our folks come out of an environment that we feel like may have been contaminated. Our core PPE, as far as even the awareness level on the bank, is going to be a flotation device. Now, there are different types. There are 5 types of PFD, and the only way they're going to be effective is if we wear them. And that's where you as awareness personnel need to demand that everyone near this scene have a personal flotation device on. The different levels are type 1, which is your horse collar life jacket. You can see a good example here in the PowerPoint. Type 2 is a smaller version of the type 1. Now, type 3 is going to be your ski vest, almost type like the vest that you see in your sporting good stores or that you wear fishing. They also include the auto-inflating suspenders too. Now, type 4 is a throwable ring buoy or a seat cushion. In the picture here on the PowerPoint shows a good picture of a throwable ring. And then you have your type 5. Now, your type 5 is going to be the most commonly used PFD in water rescue. It will have the tri-buckle release system. When you choose your rescue PFDs, type 5 is going to be the most versatile for water rescue, but know that type 3 is the most common. Those are the most common even in the fire service, because even though departments don't have surface or swiftwater teams, most of them have dive or boat teams, and your type 3 is going to be the most common PFD. The type 3 would be the most common. The type 5 is going to have the quick release buckle. It should be outfitted with a cutting tool. We like a blunt tip, short blade knife. We don't want anything that's going to cut us. Some type of a breakaway tag leash on the back with a carabiner, good reflective striping, whistles, and some type of dye pack for locating. Water rescue helmets. A good, simple rescue helmet will be fine. We never use our firefighting structural helmets for that. There are a lot of new quote unquote water rescue helmets on the market that we have experimented with. They're very good. but a typical rescue helmet will work. Be very mindful of visors. There are certain manufacturers that make a Velcro type breakaway visor that's fine. What you want to be careful is if you never hard mount anything to your helmet, because when you actually find yourself in the water, even at the awareness level, you have to always have the possibility that you might fall in the water. You don't want anything hitting that water and snapping your head back. So we don't need anything off that helmet that would catch the water in any type of moving water. So be very mindful of mounting lights that stick way out or any type of visors. We see a lot of people that like to wear ball caps under their helmets. And I stress to you just the danger of a neck injury of doing that. Gloves, we like everyone, even on the shore, even at the awareness level, back away from the scene, to have a good pair of neoprene water gloves, or if anything, just some rope gloves, because we do use a lot of ropes in water rescue, whether they be a system to build a Z-rig to get someone up off of a bluff, or we're setting up a rappelling system to rappel down to a victim in the water, or we're throwing throwbacks. We want anyone at a water rescue scene. For years, the distance was 10 foot. In the last couple of years, the standard across the country has become 15 foot. So anyone, and when I say anyone, that includes law enforcement, it includes city officials, anyone that's coming on that scene around you, anybody within 15 foot, at a minimum, need a PFD, and they need to have it on, a helmet and gloves. Once again, remember, there's no situation where you should be wearing structural firefighting gear and water rescue. Boarding watercraft, at the awareness level, you should at least be able to get in and out of a watercraft. Be guided in by someone that's actually in the boat is safer. And just know that even the rigid hull boats, even the 18, 20-foot boats, sometimes can sway. Be mindful of the center of gravity and make sure that we have good secure lines on those watercraft. Spotters, we place spotters at water rescue scenes at strategic positions. Those are to watch above of where the water is coming from for additional victims, watercraft, or any type of hazards that may be coming down through that water. And we place these spotters in these positions. They need to have a way to communicate back to operations. Now that could be verbal if they're close enough. It could be radios, it could be whistles, just some type of way to communicate should they see a hazard upstream coming down towards the incidents you have. Lighting during the daytime, of course, it's common sense that lighting wouldn't be a big deal. At night, from experience, I can tell you, you can't have enough lighting. If you're fortunate enough that you're able to get an apparatus on the scene to give you additional lighting, that would be wonderful. But you do need to know that all your rescuers, even the ones that are on the shore, everyone needs a helmet mounted light that's flush and at least a hand light. Additional spotlights you can put in your boat, the more lights, the better. We also like to put strobes on our PFDs and glow sticks also. Keep in mind that in water rescue, you could have a multi-casualty incident. So we need to remember our triage system of our green, yellow, red, and black tags. Helicopters. Here in the state of Alabama, we're very blessed with Aaliyah Aviation, and down on the coast, we have the Coast Guard. We have National Guard units that will help us any type of large-scale hurricane incident we might have. Landing zones for rescue or EMS helicopters. We need to make sure that we know that our landing zones need to be at least 100 by 100. Let's make sure we get all the debris away, no obstructions, as level as can be. And we need to try to get them as close as we can to the incident by being safe. We approach at 9 and 3 o'clock only after the pilot gives us permission to do so. Public information officer at events, water rescue events are going to draw the attention of the media. We need to make sure that we have a single point of contact. We don't need the media going around to everyone on the scene asking questions. And we need to remember we have a HIPAA. We don't want to have any HIPAA violations. So I suggest that you appoint a public information officer set up a media center away from that incident, and provide media timely updates during and after the incident. Accountability officer, even at the lowest levels, we need to have an accountability officer, just like you would at a fire or a large scale EMS scene. And we need to make sure we do a routine PAR. We also need to consider having rapid intervention teams on standby. I do know that manning, just like any type of incident, sometimes we are faced with lower levels of manning, but having a couple of people assigned to RIT is a very valuable asset that you as incident commander would have. Support positions, you're going to need support positions during and after for your victims. And, you know, a lot of times they're just simply cold and wet. We want to have people that we can call in to help these people, to turn these people over to your American Red Cross, any type of volunteer agency, your rescue squads, your church groups, private search and rescue groups, your CERT teams. And the time to contact these people is now, not during or after the incident. Contact them now, get your phone numbers, and have those stored. That way, when you have incident, you have people to be taken care of, you can contact these support positions. Safety officer, we want to make sure that our safety officer is trained to that technician level there that they are supervising. If possible, they need to be at least the awareness level for water rescue. And we can never have too many safety officers. You have the luxury of having additional people, and we can assign an additional safety officer. And once again, they need to be at least the awareness level. Normalization of deviance. Simply, it's accepting a risk because nothing's happened. Think of the dive scene you see here on the PowerPoint. You've got these guys with no PPE on beside the dive scene because that's the way they've always done it. It's just a matter of time before there is an incident that happens here. So we need to make sure that we don't accept the normalization of deviance, even at the awareness level. An incident's not over until all your personnel and gear are accounted for, all your documentation is complete, your reports are made, and debriefing. And we need to make sure we consider a critical incident stress debriefing for our personnel should we have a call with a death or serious injury. Safety is always our primary concern. So in summary, we talked about the different disciplines. We talked about the NFPA standards that address technical rescue, 1006 and 1670. We also talked about that awareness level personnel should be able to recognize both the immediate hazards in which the victim is trapped and any potential hazards found in the area. We found out that awareness level personnel should answer two key questions. Are there resources in place that can handle this? Or if they're not, where do I get them? Resources include personnel and equipment. Scene security and PPE are paramount concerns during a water rescue. Do not allow normalization of deviance to interfere with safety for personnel or civilians. And an incident is not over until all personnel and gear are accounted for. All the necessary documentation has been completed, reports have been made to the appropriate parties, and incident debriefing has occurred. Thank you very much for your time.